guys, here we are, the final episode of Game of Thrones Season 2. I'm sorry this video is a little bit late. I initially recorded this and I didn't realize how low my camera was, so it kept cutting off the top of my head, and I thought that would be a little distracting. So I am re-recording it so it will be good because I felt like I need to make it up to you since I didn't do an actual video for Korra. So here is my thoughts on Game of Thrones Season 2, what they've done, and how everything has been wrapped up in this episode. The first thing we open up with is seeing Tyrion getting better. You know, he has the bandages around his head and across his face. And as this scene unfolds with him and Mazer Pycelle, you realize that Tyrion has lost his power because now Tywin Lannister is here, and you know, they no longer need Tyrion to be Hand of the King. And Master Pycelle even mocks him because he says, like, you won't need, these are smaller quarters, but you don't need that much anymore. And he feels no qualms about doing this because Tyrion has lost everything he was fighting for initially, and all he has to show for it is this scar. And Master Pycelle flicks a coin at him, which is, you know, calling back to when, you know, Tyrion got rid of Pycelle's power and arrested him. So now it's reversed, and now Tyrion is in the position of being useless and kind of under house arrest because he has no more power. Then we get Tywin entering King's Landing and being hailed as the savior, and the episode, his scene begins with his horse shitting on the floor, which I loved, but I wish they had done the scene like from the book where the horse shits on the floor and Joffrey kind of has to like hop scotch over it to actually get to embrace his grandfather. And so he names Tywin the savior of King's Landing. Tyrion gets no acolytes for anything and announces him to be the new Hand of the King. And then Peter Baelish gets awarded Harrenhal, you know, great gift, burnt up piece of shit. But he gives Peter Baelish Harrenhal for helping align the Tyrell and Lannister houses. And then Joffrey goes to Loras and says, you know, what would you like for what you've done? And what Loras wants is for Margaery to become engaged to Joffrey. And Margaery says, you know, I fall in love with you, of your bravery and your courage, you know, full ambling it up. So you see Sansa up above watching this, and you know she's like, please God, please God, please God, let him pick her. But Joffrey's like, you know, I'm promised to my darling Sansa, I made vows. When really he just wants to keep her around to beat her up and stuff. But Cersei and Master Pycelle both tell him that, you know, they've spoken, and since the engagement was made before it was revealed that Sansa's father was a traitor and the whole uprising, it can be nullified. So Sansa is no longer Joffrey's betrothed, excuse me, and that position is now given to Margaery. And Sansa leaves the room, and you know she is so happy. She's kind of like, I'm free, I'm free, I'm really, really free. But she's not, okay, because Peter Baelish comes, she has to go poker facing it up like, I don't deserve Joffrey. I'm not good enough for him. But Peter Baelish is like, nope, I can see right through you, girl. And tells her, like, even though she's not going to be Joffrey's queen anymore, she's still in a position to be abused by him, to be sexually violated by him. She just now has no potential to get power in any way through being queen. But what Peter Baelish does tell Sansa is that he is going to try and help her escape. So that sets up the kind of the storyline for Sansa next season. Is going to be, I think it's probably going to be focusing about her trying to escape King's Landing and having Peter Baelish assist her in that. Let's see. Then we get a little scene with Roz, the greatest irrelevance in my life, seeing my homeboy Varys comes to see her and tries to turn her against Peter Baelish because he's heard about her getting abused and beaten, and so he wants to make her one of his little birds. And I just love how like sassy he is, because when Rod's trying to be like, bam, chicka, 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 and grab his stuff, Verse kind of like, there ain't nothing there, girl. You can't play them games with me. And so while I don't actually care about Roz, I am going to pretend to right now and say that I think that they could potentially do something with her character next season. Since she isn't a book character, they can pretty much do whatever they want with her. So, sky's the limit for Roz, but let's hope it actually, matters in the long run. Then we get Brienne and Jaime, my favorites. In this scene we see, Jaime's kind of mocking Brienne, saying about how, like, because she's so big and ugly and unattractive, you know, men were probably trying to always beat up on her, and he was wondering if any guys ever came to try and overpower her. And Brienne's kind of like, you can tell it bothers her, like, what he's saying, but she's kind of like trying to, like, brush it off. But, and then Jaime's like, you bet you wish that, you know, somebody could overpower you. She's like, no one can, like, I could. I'm just like, oh, really, Jaime? Is that what you're trying to say? But, then when they walk, they see three female bodies swinging from these, from the trees, saying that they slept with lions. They're probably, like, serving girls who were feeding Lannisters and were killed by Northmen. And Jaime says, aren't you glad you serve House Stark? But Brienne retorts, I don't serve House Stark. I serve Catelyn Stark. And then she ties Jaime up and then goes to try and take the bodies down to bury them, but then three men come and start kind of harassing Brienne because she's a woman and, you know, she's unattractive, so they want to piss on her. And they ask her what she's doing with Jaime, and they lie, saying that he's a thief, they're taking him to River Run because that's where they belong. But one of the guys recognizes Jaime, and the leader asks, okay, tell me what his name is on the count of three. So Brienne's kind of like, fuck this shit, and she slashes two of them, and then she gets to work on the third one. And what's interesting is that when the three men arrived, the man said that two of the women had died quick deaths, and one had died a slow death. So what you see is Brienne slowly, you know, gouging him with her sword, and Jaime's in the background, and you can tell he's kind of like, I'm kind of turned on by this. I'm intrigued by this. What is this feeling in my pants? Well, that's what I got from it, because you can tell he's kind of intrigued by her, like, by the expression he makes, and he's perfect as Jaime. Like, he's everything that character is. My only thing about this scene is that, you know, Brienne is not as, I mean, she does fight and she does kill, but the intensity of how she does it makes her a lot more violent than she is in the books, which, you know, is interesting, but I also like the kind of genuine innocence of Brienne's character, so I hope that they will always keep that in part, and while they make her a badass, let her be more than just a general badass, let her be more than that. Then we get Robb talking with Catelyn, and Robb does not want to marry Walder Frey's daughter still. He wants to be with Talisa. And Cat explains to Robb, you know, me and your father didn't love each other when we first met, but we learned to love each other because we taught and we grew as people, and while it isn't, you know, fun and as passionate as this kind of, you know, exotic relationship that he has with Talisa, it can still be powerful, it can still become love, it still has potential to do things. And he's just kind of like, well, it's not what I want, it's just because, you know, I didn't want her. And Cat knows it's because she's not beautiful and all that kind of stuff, but Robb wants to make it seem like it's so much more than that. Oops. But, you know, he doesn't care about honor. He wants to be young still and not face all of his responsibilities. And, you know, just to wrap up his storyline for right now, you see later on that he marries Talisa in a hand-fasting ceremony. And I think this scene shows why Robb fails in some aspects, because at least in the book he was doing this from some narrow-minded honor sense, which is very stark, very traditional, so I can buy that. But in the show, it's more he's being ignorant and stubborn, because while people can get annoyed with Catelyn in the universe freeing Jaime, a lot of them will excuse her for being an emotional woman, which is something that people patronize her for even outside of the universe. But men in the show will at least give her that kind of like, she's a silly woman, she's a blah blah blah. I may not agree with that, but that's probably with their mindset. But here you have Robb, a commander, a leader, who willingly, you know, decides to abandon his ally, break his vows to another house to marry a woman of no consequence. And that shows how Robb is not ready to rule beyond just battles, because it's not just about winning wars, it's about honoring your vows. And if you cannot prove to your allies that you are capable of keeping your promises, why will they follow you? So I think this scene really shows, you know, the beginning of the downfall of House Stark, beyond just the Jaime thing, because I think like there are a lot of other elements to that weren't brought in, but I think this betrayal of his vows is more telling than the Jaime thing, just in my personal opinion. I'm sure people disagree with me on that. Then we get my boy Stannis, and I really like this scene with him and Melisandre because I feel it shows Stannis' insecurities as a character. And, you know, he does feel guilty for killing Renly, and he led his troops to this battle thinking that he was going to win. He didn't, you know, just say that hundreds or thousands are going to die because for the will of it. He thought that at the end it would amount to something. It would mean glory for everyone and acknowledge and pay, you know, tribute to the dead and who sacrificed themselves for his cause. But that didn't happen. And I feel like his connection with Melisandre, his need for this whole God thing and this destiny, is a way of him feeling better about his position because he is not well liked. He's not charismatic. He's not the person that people pick, even though he feels he's been chosen. And because Melisandre gives him this idea that he's been chosen to lead, that he's incorporates this God, she can manipulate him because she ties into his weakness as a character, which is the fact that he has some insecurities because he isn't a well-loved king. And I like that. I like how they kind of made that work. I feel like that's what they were kind of doing with this scene, or that's at least what I got out of it. I don't think he really saw anything. I just feel like he was so desperate to see something, to see the greatness that he thinks he's capable of projected on something else. Then we get Theon, who is being his prickly self, and Master Luwin is trying to encourage him, you know, leave the castle, go to the Night's Watch, go do something, because he cannot stay here. He is in danger. He will be killed by Robb's men. And let me explain something. I do not like Theon Greyjoy. He is not one of my favorite characters. However, I get his points. Like, when everyone brings up the fact that, like, he should be happy about the Starks being good to him, I get what he means about, like, that's not really a great thing. Because when it comes down to it, he was a prisoner. He was a hostage. He was not an ally. He was not a ward. He was not there of his own free will. He was living with the family of the man who was responsible for the death of his brothers, for the ailment of his mother, and to separating him from his family, his culture. Everything about him was lost in some sense when he transferred over. And the reason why he's so, you know, dickish is because he's trying to always compensate for that lost feeling inside of him. And so I get when he's like, you know, it's kind of annoying to keep telling me, like, I should be grateful to these people who imprisoned me. Him being a prisoner in a nice house is still a cell. It's still a jail. He can't go home. And so I understand him, and to a degree I even sympathize with him. I simply choose not to care about his character. I don't like him regardless of that. And then, you know, we see him the next day trying to make this rousing speech of, we're worth 10 of them, we will, you know, they'll make songs about us, name their songs about us, women will fancy about us while they masturbate, word, and then he gets knocked in the head, because they're like, we're not here for that shit, we're not here to get killed, you tripping, boo-boo, So, they knock him out, and so, hopefully, next season we're probably going to find out what happens to him, or what he gets subjected to. Like, is he going to go back to Robb, or what else is going to happen with his character? So, Theon is down for the count. Then we see Tyrion talking with Varys, and we get Podrick, Hollowback, Neville on the side. They're kind of like telling Tyrion that, you know, he's not going to have any power, things suck, but they know that he is responsible for saving them. And I think that was really touching. But then we get the scene with Shay talking about, like, you know, I love you, I care about you, I don't care about the money, let's just go together. And that's twofold, because I feel like for Tyrion, King's Landing is like a double-edged sword for him. It's where he thrives. The politics, the manipulation, all that stuff is in his element. It's what makes him work. But at the same time, it helps corrupt him. It makes him do things he doesn't want to do. It puts him in a position to be constantly ridiculed. And the fact that he's always looked down upon is what gives him the encouragement to manipulate them, but it's built upon a negative already. And so, you know, it's this double-edged sword for him. And with the character of Shay, I'm really interested in how they're going to continue her character, because they really make it seem like she genuinely cares for Tyrion. And I hope that they still manage to keep things the way they do, but I really want to see, like, how they further her character later on. And then, of course, she unbandaged his face, and he has this long gash across his face. It could have been worse, he could have lost his nose, but, you know, that would have been too much CGI. I understand that, or too much makeup. And I think it's really telling that, you know, he sacrificed everything to protect the city, the land, everything. And all he has to show for it is this scar. This is all he has left. I'm gonna leave Jon and Dany's storylines for the very end because they're separate from the main plot anyway. Arya meets up with Jaqen again while she's traveling with High Valyrian and Gendry, and she asks Jaqen how he managed to kill all these guards and if it was hard. Jaqen says no because he's a badass. What? And then Arya asks Jaqen if she can learn from him. He says that if she wants to learn, she has to come with him to Braavos. She says no because she wants to go back to find her sister, her mother, and her brother. So Jaqen gives her a coin and says that if you ever need to find me, give this to any man in Braavos and say the magic words, which I cannot pronounce, but you know what they are, you saw the episode. So Arya says it, and then she says his name, and then you see, he says like Jaqen is no more, and then he turns around, and when he turns back, he has a completely new face. And it's kind of like, yes, I really love how they did that scene. With Arya's storyline wrapping up, I feel like I like Arya as a character, but I really hope they don't shy away from the darkness of her character, because I feel like that is just as important as anything else. I mean, she's still a heroine, she's still someone you root for, but she is a dark character, and I feel they don't bring that in. It's a real disservice to the character, and I don't think it's because Maisie is young. I don't think that's why. I think the reason why they tone it down is because they want people to love her character so much. Because her and Peter Dinklage's character are characters that people root for, so they kind of tone down the darker sides of them, and I don't like that, but at the same time, I like their characters, so I hope that they still have them be darker than just, you know, the token underdogs in the series. Bran and Rickon come out, and they see Winterfell is burning, because when the men knocked out Tyrion, they started burning everything. So they go to find Master Luwin, who was stabbed during the process, and he tells the young kids to go north to find Jon to get protection. And then he asks Osha to end his life quicker, which was really sad because, you know, he's been this father figure to them their whole lives. So just another part of their world that has been shattered by this war, by this whole travesty. And so that was a really touching scene. I really like how it came together. And we got to see, you know, Summer and Shaggy Dog finally. So that was really good for me. My little sweet Rickon. He's gonna be a little feral Mowgli, I swear to God. Okay, so let's get to Jon Snow and Daenerys. Jon Snow, basically, he fights, let's see what this mofo's name is, Half Hand. He fights Half Hand in this battle of hand-to-hand combat, well, sword combat. And with that, he has proven himself to the wildlings. And instead of, you know, taking him captive, he kind of starts to become incorporated as one of their own. He's no longer a crow. He becomes a renegade wildling, just like Mance Rayder. So next season, we're probably going to see Jon incorporate more with the wildling world, learn more about how they work and everything like that, because you see this look of this kind of village-like territory. So I feel like hopefully next season we'll see more of Jon becoming more dynamic, not just him walking and doing stuff. He'll learn, he'll grow as a character, and he can finally, you know, develop. As for Dany, basically we get her whole thing with the House of the Undying. She walks with Jorah and one of her other Talisa, and she goes into the building, and she kind of has these two scenes. And I feel like the House of the Undying is really important in the book because it foreshadows so many events of things that happen later on. So it's not just like, oh, pow, it's suspense. There are build-ups so that we see in this, and it gives you good background information too. So to see that get cut out was really, really disappointing to me. Not because I think it was like, you know, it's just a change and I didn't like. It's because that scene sets up stuff for other seasons. And so I don't know why they wouldn't do that. It's perfect for them. It gives you foreshadowing. It allows you to expand universe. It gives readers a hint of what's to come or what has happened. So I don't know why they kind of minimize it to just these two scenes and then, you know, shit goes on. But anyway, she goes into the Iron Throne room, and it's winter, you know, snowing down, winter is coming, you know. And she walks slowly towards the Iron Throne, and she reaches out to touch it, but then she doesn't because she hears this crying. And then she goes out the door, and it looks like she's going beyond the wall, that she ends up in her tent, and Drogo's there. And even though I'm disappointed with how they handled the House of the Undying scene, I thought the scene was kind of cute, just because, you know, I don't really think that, you know, Dany and Drogo is cute, because it's very problematic, so much Stockholm Syndrome, like, Jesus Christ. But at the same time, you know, I was sad to see the character go. I liked Drogo as a character, despite his flaws. And the relationship, because of those elements, was problematic, but it was still interesting in her growing as a character. And so seeing Drogo come back and being like, I probably told the god to go fuck himself because I was going to wait for you because you're my girl. And he's cradling their baby that they would have had if she hadn't, you know, gone through that whole ceremony to try and bring his life back. And this scene was good in the sense of that you see what Dany has lost in her new life. For her, this quest to become, you know, queen. She's lost the man that she loves. She's lost her chance to actually have kids. Because it's kind of implied that, you know, she's infertile after this whole thing with dragons. So there's probably a good chance that she can't give birth to actual human children. So it was very touching. But then we get out of that scene, and then we just have, you know, the dragons are all chained up. And then the two creepy guys are walking around telling her that her dragons, their birth, brought magic back into the world. And that their being around them makes the evil guy stronger, and her being there makes everything that much stronger. So they kind of chain Dany up, and are like, you're going to stay here, and we're going to be powerful. But then Dany just says the command for fire, and the dragons burn off the little creepy dudes, and shit goes real. She goes into Zarn Daxos's room, and in there is her handmaiden, being a little trifler, and, she's like, oh, forgive me, Khaleesi, they told me you would never live. But Dany just looks at her just like, girl, you don't even know. You don't even know. And so she takes his little charm, his little bracelet, and tries to opens the vault, and there's nothing in there, all that riches and wealth and blah blah blah. Not a goddamn thing. So she takes Zarn Daxos and fucking trade a bitch and just puts them in the vault, locks them in, and just kind of like, you just, Khaleesi, forgive me. She's like, nope, not here for that. Psh, whatever. Then you see her in the and all of a sudden she has a horde of Dothraki again, or I don't, like, they look like Dothraki, like, so she just collect some more brown people from Qarth, like, what is this? What's going on? What's happening? So they're taking all this stuff, like, what they were telling her to do from, like, episode, like, Spy, like, we should take this shit and get the fuck out. It's like, no, we have to be classy. They're like, Nat's like, told you so, taking all this nice stuff. So now we see that Dany is getting all these fancy things that she can sell, and now get money for a ship. So we're probably going to see more of her journey and seeing new stuff, and maybe she'll even get to Westeros. You never know. But that ends, and then we get the scene with Sam and the other two random Night's Watch guys whose names I can never remember because I don't care about them that much. So they're walking around, and Sam's talking about how much he likes Jilly and all that kind of stuff. And then they hear one horn, and they're like, oh, they're coming back. And then you hear two horns, like, oh shit, wildlings. Then they hear three horns. Shit is real. And the two guys start running, and then, you know, Sam tries to follow after them, but he falls. Because, you know, he's the clumsy fat guy, how creative. But he falls, and then the guys get lost in the distance. And then you see slowly the White Walkers coming in from the terrain, and it is some scurry shit, yo. And he hides behind the rock, and it's just like, you slowly see these they're like half rotted because they're frozen from the cold, so they're not like falling apart, but these like skeletons of these half-eaten bodies, and then you see that half-digested horse thing, and it is so cool. Like that the leader of the White Walkers with his face, that makeup and all that stuff, it's kind of like, oh shit, son. And it's just like all of that, and then you get this pan-out look of all of these people, and you realize this is what Dany brought into the world with her dragons. She brought back, you know, all this magic, all this crazy shit. And it's just like, where is this going to go? How is she going to incorporate into this? And it builds up so much stuff that's going to happen later on. But speaking of that aspect of building up for later on, I have to make this comment that I think is the reason why a lot of people sometimes feel unsatisfied with this book and this season and what's going on. The way G.R.R. Martin has written the series and written, you know, this world is that a lot of the stuff that we get introduced in one book or one season isn't always resolved in that book or in that season. But there are things from book 1, season 1, that will not be resolved until the end of season 3 and book 3. There are things from that book, from the second book, from the third book, that are still not resolved, and, you know, it's 5 books in. This series does not have instant gratification, or even close gratification. A lot of stuff doesn't happen till much, much later. Anyway, I thought this season set up stuff well. It wrapped up stuff, set up things. It did everything that a season finale of this sort should do. So I thought it was good at doing stuff. I'm disappointed for a few things, especially House of the Undying. That was one of the things I was looking the most forward to. I thought they handled it kind of weird. I don't know why they didn't just do what it was done in the books to a degree. I know something they probably couldn't do because it was too extreme, but just little things I felt like they could have just done, but they didn't do. So I'm hoping that, you know, hoping good thing for next season, and, you know, we gotta wait a year.